All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we're back here at the Bokeh Podcast with not only another episode, but a live episode. So first of all, for those of you who are watching live, of course, you'll know that we're live both on Facebook, facebook.com/Bokeh Podcast. And then currently we're streaming to the Photographer's Edit YouTube page, which is facebook.com/photogsedit. And I'm joined today by some what feels like longtime friends, Phillip and Eileen Blume, return guests on the podcast. Welcome, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me. It is funny when we do these live productions or even non-live productions and produce the whole thing, there's a bit of formality to the production process. And yet I'm friends with you guys, so it feels kind of weird doing that. Thank you for hanging out with me today. We'll keep it as low-key as possible. Oh, and I muted you. Sorry.
Nathan.
What? There we go. Now we're live. We're good. We're good.
Oh.
All right. Technical issues. Go.
On that friendly note, Nathan, can I give you a little constructive feedback?
Please.
That intro music, it reminded me of the Truman Show. I don't know if you ever thought that. So now I feel like I'm at some deceptively idyllic seaside dystopia.
One of the
but
best.
Here we are on reality TV, so it's perfect.
It's very calming. It was almost putting me to sleep.
That's it's funny you say that because I know a lot of the trend is to have this kind of upbeat kind of hip hop music in the background, but it's so much the trend and you pretty much hear it everywhere that it seems cliche at this point. So I actually like kind of mixing it up and doing something a little bit different.
I like it. It just puts you just in the zone and I'm just going to focus. I don't know, center myself kind of music.
Not only is it a purple cow, but I think it lines up well with one thing I love about you, Nathan, which is just kind of that Zen vibe you've got going of and the minimalist kind of feel. Yeah, it's perfect.
Okay, good. All right, good. Well, as long as you're not quite asleep yet. And it is. I have to add this note too, just to kind of keep things personal. My probably favorite music to listen to is orchestral soundtrack music. So I guess similar to what we're talking about in this case. But it's
especially when working.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, putting that in the background because I'm too analytical. So if I've got music playing with lyrics in the background, a lot of times I'm going to be a little bit distracted. I want to go there. So it's nice just to have something kind of soothing and calm playing in the background.
Same here. We play the classical study music in the background.
Yeah, Spotify's got a variety of playlists like that. They're pretty great. But for everybody listening in, first of all, I just want to very quickly just pop up the Bloome's website here on the screen. It's thebloomes.co. And you can also follow them on Instagram if you go to just The Bloomes, TheBlumes, for those of you that are listening in. And for those of you that are streaming, that are actually watching live currently, please don't hesitate to comment, ask questions, send us silly emojis, engage. We want to actually have a conversation. And so don't hesitate to take advantage there and send those comments in as we're chatting. But we're going to jump right into this podcast. I will add this little caveat. I mentioned earlier that I'd had you guys on the show before. It's crazy. It's been over 3 years. Back in episode 87, actually. Can you believe that?
When you wrote that kind of blew my mind and made me feel very old. So thank you for that as well. The gray hairs have shown up since the last time that we did an interview.
Oh, I was talking to Jill about this the other day. I mean, you can't see it as well on screen right now, but they're all over the place for me. And I'm only 41. I feel 15.
Nice highlights.
It's weird to see them. Oh, yeah. That's what they are, technically, just highlights, right? Yeah. A lot's happened, though, in the last 3 years. I know the last time that we were chatting, we were actually sitting down at Show It United. One of my favorite photography conferences, certainly. And it was fun to do it in that live environment. But things have changed a little bit. We're not going to get a chance to actually be at Show It together this year. I appreciate you guys doing this remotely. But the format of the podcast has changed a little bit. In addition to adding video, we've kind of mixed up the questions a little bit. So I want to go and ask the questions I've been asking my guests recently. Ones that we didn't really touch on, I don't think, the last time that we chatted. To get things started. And we're going to get into a topic which we haven't spent a lot of time discussing on the podcast, which is mini sessions and really how to maximize.
There's probably a reason you've avoided that up until now. It can be quite a tragic ending when you start getting into mini sessions if you go the wrong route.
Right.
Fair enough.
Most photographers understand that intuitively.
And maybe this is before we get into brand position, which is really the first topic or question that I normally hit. Just briefly, if you don't mind, we shared your website, but as you're talking, I'm going to pull that website up here so everybody can see it. Talk to our listeners a little bit about your brand. Just briefly intro it, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you're going to our website. That actually was the topic that we were having 3 years ago. Nathan was
Yes.
when
The
we were
website, how
first
to
updating our
structure it,
website
right?
and the strategy behind
Right.
that. The funny thing about our brand is that the face of it remains wedding photography, right? And we do photograph weddings, but now these days it is a small portion of what we do, but for a very strategic reason, it remains the kind of the upfront facade of our business.
Okay.
So that's maybe interesting to some folks, but we did start out as 100% wedding photographers. We had no time to photograph anything else when we were in the early days, just overrun with bookings. And that didn't necessarily mean we were succeeding. A lot of people think, oh, I started my business and I'm overrun with bookings. Now it's success. And then pretty soon, most photographers come to a point where they look at the numbers and they realize they're paying money to wear themselves out to try to keep a business going. And so that was our experience early on. It was not a profitable wedding photography business right out the outset, although it looked like a popular wedding photography business. So today most of our work, the sustainable, kind of life-giving, profit-generating work that we do as a photography business is done through mini sessions, and it's done kind of behind the scenes in a way that we'll talk a little bit more about it, but it has just
been the engine that runs our business.
It's been the engine, and it's really allowed our family to flourish in new ways we're so excited about.
Yeah, I'm curious. We are going to dig into kind of not even the logistics, the model, I guess, that you all have developed around mini sessions. I'm also kind of curious to talk about how that model has affected your life, what it looks like for you personally as a family in comparison to what it looked like when weddings were the focus. But we'll save that. We'll get to that here in just a little bit. We've got a couple comments coming in too. Right here, Kenny is saying hello from San Jose. And
Kenny?
Good day.
Yeah. And then Sean says, love the Blooms. You guys know Sean from the Rock
We
That
know
Conference.
Yeah, rock that.
Sean, I want to hug you.
Shout
Miss you,
out
brother.
to both Kenny and Sean. And again, for everybody that is watching live, don't hesitate on YouTube, on Facebook. Don't hesitate to comment, say hello, ask questions as we go along. And as I have the opportunity, I'll pop those up on screen. For those of you listening in, make sure to follow us on social media at Bokeh Podcast, BOKEH Podcast. And you can stay up to date as to when the next live broadcast is going out. We're hitting this transition period, Phillip and Eileen, where we're going from the audio, we're catching up on all the audio interviews, and then moving to basically we'll call it 98% live format, which is also going to mean a quicker turnaround time. So the schedule is coming to a head, and we're going to be a little bit more organized moving forward. But nonetheless, for everybody listening in, make sure you check out these live broadcasts moving forward. And Sean says, y'all rock, all of you. Thanks, Sean. You're super. I'll tell you, we had Sean on the podcast. It's been about a month or two ago or so. He is Sean, and I have to say, shout out to Sean. You are one of the most incredible individuals when it comes to bringing energy to a conversation. I don't know if you guys have experienced that, but it's infectious. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Energy, and maybe that's almost just a side effect of something even deeper that I see in Sean and love about him is he brings a light, like more than just excitement, but real wisdom and motivation. This past year, so many of us have needed that, and Sean has been responsible for bringing that light to so many people. So he's awesome. Yep, totally agree. Well,
and I have to say, and we'll kind of leave this because it's a much deeper topic, but I have to say something else that Sean has done. It certainly changed my perspective, encouraged the beginning of a change, I should say, to not only my perspective, but the way that I'm thinking about business. What Sean is doing as a business owner for the sake of community is a really fascinating conversation. We discussed it on the podcast previously, and maybe Jill can link to that in the show notes for anybody who's curious. We'll make sure to link to that episode. But what Sean has done as a business owner, not just thinking about how to grow a business, but then how to leverage business for the sake of serving a community, is something that really nobody else in the industry is actively talking about the way that he is. And I'm really excited. We're going to be part of his upcoming conference. And I'm not just excited for the sake of being connected to that. Yes, absolutely. Rock that. Not just for the sake of connection with his brand, but also learning what it means via Sean, how to serve a community through our photography industry. I'm pretty stoked about that.
Yeah, I love that.
Totally. Cool.
So,
I want to be there. Yeah. Once we're back in person, we all got to get together.
Absolutely. Well, and we're going to have to, we'll certainly be sharing the details of the upcoming conferences, the Rock That conferences with Sean. But I want to keep going. We have a lot to talk about.
Yes.
Let's actually talk about brand position, because this is first of all, this is a topic that's not discussed a whole lot in the industry. And in a noisy industry, there are a lot of photographers. And I don't say noisy in a critical way, by the way. There's just a lot of photographers talking about their businesses, trying to sell their brands to a potential client. I think one of the missing components to the conversation around marketing in our industry has to do with brand position. How do you communicate succinctly, briefly, what differentiates your business from the photographer down the street? So I'm curious how you all would position yourselves as a photography business.
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback on what you're saying, because I think it's so critical to understand, we have seen just socially, and this market research is done to kind of bear this out, but over the last very short amount of time, over the last 2 to 5 years, really have seen this huge shift where we had kind of the expansion of the internet. Eileen and I started our business before that, when you still wanted to get your business in the yellow pages. And so we had a website when we first started, and we're like, we're special because not everyone has moved from the yellow pages to the internet yet. And very quickly that became, we can reach the whole world. There's no limit to our client base, to now really there's a measurable fatigue, information fatigue, and it's inevitable. Human beings, psychologically, mentally, biologically, we're not designed to be able to ingest and process what's going on in the world everywhere at all times. And it's actually, a lot of us are seeing it's leading to many kind of breakdowns in social fabric and things. For a business perspective, we have to understand this as well, because it will, you can just think, well, the internet allows me to access anyone, and I can just Facebook ads and so on and so forth. And why am I not succeeding? It's because that information is doing more harm than it is good to potential clients now. And so our brand has really found, over so many experiences, we've learned that it always takes going back to the core business foundational principles that business experts and marketing psychologists have taught for centuries. These things are based on human nature, and they do not change or grow old. So our business is really focused on a local market now, whereas we started out, like I said, in that wedding photography world of destination weddings, and we just wanted to be everywhere, and we want everyone around the world to want us and demand us, and we've got to experience some of that life, but the pros and cons of it. But really realize that for sustainability, for scale growth, personal growth as well as business growth, you can't overestimate the value of local marketing being a part of your community. So I would say, how would you want to kind of answer that question in terms of?
Well, it's just about celebrating lives, right?
Okay.
Celebrating lives at their most important moments. So whether it's newborn, or whether it's a senior graduating from high school, or weddings, So I think that was, in short, what our brand is and what our business does.
So helping families celebrate all those moments.
Right.
That makes sense. And I think it's interesting. So if let's just say your position statement or tagline was helping families celebrate life, for example, it's an interesting position statement, at least from my perspective, as I've spent a lot of time thinking through these position statements, because it enables you to not only be a wedding photographer, but also a family photographer. A wedding is the beginning of a family, and then you continue that with actual family photography.
Follow them along in their life journey.
So I think as a position statement, that's really interesting. But you mentioned two things I'm curious about here. So number one, I want to go back just for a second. Phillip, you mentioned that Facebook ads can potentially be detrimental. Can you just comment? I know that's a loaded topic, but can you just briefly comment on that? Because we kind of skirted over that and was like, wait a minute, let's go back.
Well, so, and it is a loaded topic, right? Because I do want to probably give the caveat that Facebook ads can be incredibly effective. But the moment we live in now, there was a time when I could play around and figure out Facebook ads. And now it's like Facebook ads managers become like 10 times the complexity of Photoshop, right?
Yeah.
That's something we photographers can all relate to.
It's a
There's
lot.
too much to learn. It takes a full-time professional to really hone that and make it work. You as a photographer running a business, that's not another hat that I feel like anyone wants to add.
Sure.
You have to be an expert to do it right. So there are many elements. I can think of a dozen different elements right off the top of my head, like new art, the art of communication that you have to learn to really make those work well.
Sure.
And if you don't have all those kind of expertly battened down as you do your Facebook advertising, then you run the risk of just adding to that noise. That I think you put it very well, Nathan, that at the beginning of this, that it really becomes so much noise that you can just be paying money. That early experience Eileen and I had of advertising, throwing your dollars at this, throwing your dollars at that, seeing what sticks.
Sure.
And that is one where you can throw them away very quickly without getting return on it if you're not careful.
Okay, that makes sense. You're right. It is a lot, and it's ever changing, and it's a bit ironic in that the goal of, or part of the goal of marketing is to stand out, but largely the goal of marketing really is to stand out amidst the so-called noise. Yet, because Facebook has become such a popular platform, you're kind of getting in the middle of the noise too. So,
everyone's doing it now.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, we'll leave that alone for now. Eileen, something else. I'm going to kind of push back when it comes to brand position just a little bit here. I'm curious to get your thought on this, and Phillip as well. But so if you're celebrating family lives, this is a concept or a notion that is relatively popular amongst photographers. I would assume there might be other wedding photographers, family photographers there in your market specifically,
right,
that offer a service, at least with the same idea, the thought process behind it. So how do you differentiate yourselves with that type of a position statement around other photographers who might be saying similar things?
Well, we're all about, and I love the book Building a Story Brand, by the way.
Yes.
And so I'm always thinking of how can we be the guide? How can the customer or client be the hero? And for us, it wasn't about like, this is what we like, this is who we are, and if you're like us, then we will serve you. We moved more towards us serving people where they are, allowing them to be seen and heard. And that's what makes people feel loved and validated. So basically just serving people where they are. And part of our mission statement is to celebrate lives and to reclaim lives where they're being destroyed. So that's where kind of our personal projects and nonprofits come into play, where we can use our gifts and use the success of our business to bless others. Who wouldn't otherwise have the resources to even thrive.
Okay.
And really, although there are a lot of photographers in our market, just like anywhere, it's saturated. We happen to be in a smallish market that has universities and tech colleges and a popular art school. Lots of photographers. Always, every year, new wave of new photographers popping up. But I think that as many of those are available to shoot anything, whatever you want, the fact that we have the language to speak to people's deeper needs, rather than just, you need photos, we'll take those for you. It's really we're the rare photographer in the area who's a full service experience, meaning we're going to bring you in, we're going to help you think about what is it that you value about the photography. Can we turn that to physical artwork? Can we put that in your home for the purpose of, as your children grow up in the shadow of this artwork, they feel loved. They know that they have the place of honor in your home and are featured above everything else. So having that language and offering that full service of walking people through that by the hand is something we don't see a lot of, especially among newly graduated art students or something. They haven't learned all of that service experience,
Right.
even though they might be great photographers.
Well, and Eileen, I'm glad that you point out, or that you bring up this book. In fact, I'm going to actually share it on the screen for everybody that might be watching the live stream, Building a Story Brand. One of my favorite marketing books, one of my favorite business books, honestly, of all time. Largely, by the way, because it's a minimal amount of fluff, if you will. A lot of business books, you spend like 80% of the time just reading through filler language, and then they get to the
Right.
point. And Donald Miller does a beautiful job of making this super practical. I'm actually in the middle. I've been taking a long time to get through it, but Marketing Made Simple is another book that he wrote. In fact, I'll
Right.
pull this up on screen really quick too for anybody who's curious. But it's another great book. Again, super, super practical, easy read. And I can't recommend either of these books enough. So we'll make sure to link to them in the show notes at bokapodcast.com.
Gotta read that next.
It's super. In fact, I'll get you guys a copy because I can't. I love Building a Story Brand, and this just took it like a step further as far as the level of practicality, because he takes those principles
Nice.
from Story Brand and weaves them into the content for this other book. So anyway, yeah, highly recommended for everybody. I'll get
Very
you guys
cool.
a copy as well.
Awesome. Thank you,
thanks.
Oprah. I mean, Nathan, you get a book. You get a book.
But just very quickly, and I know we've only gotten through one question here yet, but what I wanted to say, Eileen, that I love that you highlight his book because, and I was actually reminded of this as much as this morning, and I was listening to a Gary Vaynerchuk video while I was at the gym, and one of the things he talked about was, in fact, they were talking about brand position, and the simple version, if I can sum it up, he was saying, hey, look, don't put so much weight on a singular message as much as figuring out where you can meet the needs of multiple subgroups in your market. So if you just focus on one message to everybody,
Right.
it may certainly resonate with certain groups of people, but then you may be missing out on an opportunity to serve other people. So if we focus instead, and I know I'm playing devil's advocate for myself here,
Yeah,
because I put a lot of
exactly.
weight on brand position, but the flip side of the conversation is what you highlight, which is if we focus on how we bring value to that individual that we want to serve, that we make them the hero of the story, a la Donald Miller, there's so much power in that. I guess kind of the ideal thing is where the brand position statement is able to sum up our mission, which is then how we serve that particular client. But I
Right.
love the balance there. Brand position carries significance, but ultimately at the end of the day, what really matters is how we serve people, how we meet their needs, and ultimately how we make them the hero of their own story. That is what's most important at the end. I love that.
And I love that a business that is self-aware enough, it's consciously trying to do that. We, especially as photographers running small businesses, we kind of are our business. So if we focus our business on that, for me at least, it has reflected back and forced me into personal growth. I don't remember who said it, but one of these great business thinkers said you can work on your business and you can make a living. You can work on yourself and you can make a fortune. And I found that when you really focus on, we know from research that speaking to people this way helps businesses to grow, but you don't just do that robotically. You do it authentically, and you start to realize the reason that works is because seeing people as humans and seeing their value it's a natural byproduct that your business would grow because you're treating people the way they should be treated. And then I've just experienced over years of doing that. It's like my business is a practice for how to treat people every day, and it's just increasing the value, I think, of our relationships and everything.
Yeah, definitely.
Wow. I mean, we could spend a whole podcast episode just there, because even as you're talking,
Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking there's so many tangents we can go on with that. I like what you said about just the growth, even just from meeting people, interacting with people who are different from you, just not unlike just traveling. So much growth in that, rather than just being in an echo chamber or just sticking to just the same type of people.
This is where being small business owners, I feel like we are positioned as small business owners to change the world. And like, it really is it's more than a gig. It's more than paying your next bill. It really is. If you realize that business is mission, I'm really thankful to be a small business owner for that reason.
Yeah, well, and largely, I would assume you're referring to the way that we have on an individual level to engage with other human beings, for lack of a better phrase here, that we have the ability to interact with them on a kind of a micro level, and that we're able to understand individually what their needs are and how we can more effectively meet them. And when you see that kind of snowball effect from many small businesses doing that very thing, the impact that we can have in the world at large is quite significant.
Yes, absolutely.
Huge. Okay, well, we're going to keep going. We really could go so many different directions here. You mentioned travel, Eileen, and I went back immediately to our conversation about Japan in the previous episode. So many different directions.
It's one of our great connection points.
Absolutely. And we'll link to the previous episode for everybody listening. And if you didn't hear Phillip and Eileen in episode, I think it was 80, what did I say, 86, 87?
86, I think.
87, yeah. There we go. We'll make sure to link to that in the show notes. But let's keep going. So talk to me about customer service. And I'm going to add the caveat here that for those of you, especially that are new to the Boca podcast, you might say, well, customer experience, this is almost like a cliche topic at this point. Everybody's talking about it. It is, but I think one of the things that gets missed many times is the significance of customer experience, especially in the photography world, as it relates to the ability to build a business. A lot of photographers put weight on, their editing style, for example. When what they're doing in Lightroom with a preset versus thinking about what is the actual end experience of the person that I'm serving. So to that end, or maybe not necessarily related to photography specifically, but just as a general rule, y'all's experience as business owners, what would you say has been the most impactful principle for providing a great customer experience?
Can I open that up?
Go for it.
So as you were talking, I was kind of thinking of, because we've been coaching photographers and helping them grow their businesses for a long time. And I see this pattern emerging. I see this context in which most people think of customer experience and what that is. And it's why it's become so cliche, because people think, well, customer experience is just the details that you put into it's everything from your logo to what little, parting gifts you give a client out the door. And those are like some of the details of client experience, but you can do all those things and you can miss the whole point. I think maybe two of the ways that people try client experience, but it still seems to fall flat, is one, kind of what you're mentioning, like client experience means that I am the perfect artist and that no one, you couldn't go to any other artist and get the amazing experience. And we start to think of ourselves as, we become perfectionists.
Yeah.
And it can actually ruin your business because like that, I have to spend 3 hours on that edit and then the customer will love me and they'll come flocking to me.
By the way, 3 hours is a pretty conservative number too. I mean, a lot of photographers like 10, 12, 20 hours even on a wedding. Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And you don't even realize, you think that the more, it's like self-flagellating. Like the more pain I cause myself and the more time I devote to the hard work, then the more I'll succeed. And your customers are like, I don't care about any of that. I mean, the classic example is, and it's why we found mini sessions is kind of this weird genre that actually serves clients better than we thought it could. Because a lot of people will add, our sessions are 90 minutes. Well, our sessions are 2 hours. Well, our sessions last all day long, and we eat every meal with you throughout the day. And it's like
we have seen that.
You're adding client experience, and it's not what people actually want.
Right.
They're actually like, I've got things to do, and I haven't had dinner with 12 people on my list who I really care about for a year. Yeah. I don't really want to spend it with you, even though you're an awesome photographer. We make our businesses about ourselves. Like we're so awesome and you get to spend time with us.
More time.
What if we found like, what is our client's real internal need? And when we met that, so it's, whether it's from editing to whether it's just like doing everything that a client wants, like the customer's always right. So if they ask it, we do it. We'll discount that price. We'll customize. We'll go to another book vendor and get that book that they kind of imagined instead of what we offer. And what we found is real client experience means kind of being like the life coach for your client. So instead of just being the humble photographer, right? You are humble in the sense that you're not always talking about yourself. It's not about how much time you spent editing, or they should feel bad for you because artists don't get paid for what they're worth, and think of all the money you've invested in your gear. Instead, you don't talk about yourself. You focus on them. And if they have a question, you don't immediately break down because they have an objection and be like, well, let me discount that for you. Instead, you're going to have a clear answer, but that always puts your concern for them at the forefront. So can I have the raw images? Well, instead of answering with a no, like, no, clients can't have the raw images. That's our copyright. That's what allows us to survive as a business.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry. Back up. Not about me. Oh, well, raw images aren't processed. It's kind of, it gives us latitude as artists to perfect the images that you receive. But you certainly can purchase the fully retouched versions of images at this rate. It's on the menu. Or we actually include the color corrected versions so that you don't have to sift through and or do that work yourself. We're full service, so you can actually get those included with certain artwork purchases. We want to make sure that all of our clients are ensured to have lasting heirloom artwork in their homes that they can enjoy every day. So we're talking about why do we have the policies we have in our business? We put them in place thoughtfully, and if we put them in place always with our clients' best interest at heart, it may not be what they think they want, but it's what serves them best. And so being able to communicate that to me is client experience.
Right. For them to see the value to them, not the value to us or why we need it or why we have this rule in place, but what's in it for them.
Yeah, it's funny. I as you were talking about the significance of that very principle, I was thinking about personal relationships too. Like the number of times in my relationship with my girlfriend that I projected my feelings, my issues, my insecurities, ultimately my ego in one form or another onto our interaction and made assumptions that were ultimately hurtful to the relationship, whether I vocalize them or not. So it's funny how the same thing happens in business. It seems like a comparable experience in that we have a tendency as photographers, and certainly I've been guilty of this in business as well, where we project whatever our assumptions are onto that person, assuming that they, quote, need something, when the reality is their actual needs, their perception, their experience is quite largely different than what we are assuming. We can't be so quick to project our assumptions, our needs, our ego onto our clients. We really need to be consistently and constantly asking the question, what do you need? How can I best serve you? And I love the way that you explain that too, Phillip. Can I have the raw images? Let's not make it about us and talk about copyright, which it's just going to fall on deaf ears too with most clients. They don't even understand the principle. Speak to their needs. The last thing that I would want you to do is to have to go through and process images. Can I give you the finished images that are already processed for you so you don't have to spend hours and hours doing that? Oh, absolutely. That'd be awesome. Thank you. Simple enough conversation, right? Because I'm speaking to how this could affect them negatively, processing images for hours. Let me do that for you. I'm going to give you a great finished product. And now I've addressed their need, not talked about how my ego is tied to copyright and all the other things.
Yeah, because as humans, we default to defensiveness, right? It's fight, flight, or freeze. This is survival instincts. So that's our default mechanism. We really have to be self-aware and focused on personal growth to overcome that natural default and become good business people as a result. I think it distills down to human relationships, right? So you're pointing out whether it's a business relationship, that's another human being on the other side of that, or your closest personal relationships.
And what was it you said before? A question is not an objection, but it's a request for more.
Well, an objection is.
What was it?
An objection is not a rejection.
Rejection, but it's a request for more information.
That's that defensive feeling we have. As a client asks us a question, and we're like, "Oh shoot!
Oh, they must want this and that, and I'll give it to them."
They're rejecting me. No, it's just they're just requesting, and you can provide that information in a thoughtful way.
Them, right?
That's good. Wow. And here we are, 2 questions in and like a half hour in. We're going to have to keep moving. I want to respect everybody's time here. But speaking of, and a bit ironically, let's talk about time just briefly. I want to get your take, especially having a relatively large family. In fact, it was fun. Jill and I, so everybody listening in, Jill produces the show for the Boca Podcast, runs our digital marketing. And Jill and I were looking at the previous thumbnail for the last episode that we did with you guys. And then the most recent family picture that you posted on your Instagram. I think it's actually up here. I can even, let me pull this up here on screen and share it for everybody that's watching the live stream. But the picture from Easter, beautiful, beautiful picture in your family. But this is great though, because it highlights the significance of this topic of time. And so I'm curious, how you all, is there a particular idea? And Eileen, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, a principle that
Sure.
drives time management when it comes to running a business and also having family and wanting to just be able to do more than sit in front of a computer.
Yeah. For me, I have to schedule it in. I have my physical planner, and unless it's scheduled in, it does not happen. Something else will always get in the way, or this comes up and it's like, oh, I should just do this and that. But if you stick to a certain schedule where you have boundaries, then you can find that you have more free time for yourself and for your kids and for your loved ones.
So I'm curious, and I love that. I love the simplicity of that notion, and I would fully agree. I tend to treat my calendar an absolute concept, right? Like if I put it in the calendar, it's going to happen. I'm committing to it. I share that calendar with who knows how many people at this point too, so they're seeing it. There's a bit of accountability there. But I've gotten too many responses from photographers over the years, or various people in the industry, or even in my personal life, who are like, I'm quote too busy. And to me, that's more a symptom of just not being willing to commit many times. They're not willing to actually put something in the calendar and say, I'm going to do that thing. Again, whether that's our personal lives or professional lives. Can you speak to the significance of that commitment and actually following through when it comes to managing time through your calendar?
Yeah.
That was a little bit of an uncomfortable smile.
Yeah. I was like, besides just scheduling, it's even just making that mental decision. I'm just gonna get up. I'm gonna get started.
Yeah.
Movement, the first thing in the morning, helps the rest of my day so much. Movement and meditation, and that's what we preach is first hour to 2 hours,
and
even.
Just as an illustration of that, so in our larger photography community, the shirt I'm wearing, we're not overcome by the digital online world. We have been too much in the past that we know to avoid social media craze and all that. But we are on social media every single morning with our community at 10 a.m. sharp. And it's not a time when Facebook has a lot of viewers, or you're trying to boost your numbers in a group or something. We go there because, in a very authentic biological way, starting the day and having accountability is something we lack in the photography world. And we want people to have that. So the first thing we do every single morning with photographers is movement and meditation that Eileen is talking about.
Yeah, the movement and meditation. And I say that because when I do my movement, when I just recently started running, but when I do that physical activity, it just makes me it motivates me to do tasks and complete them, do it faster. So it's crazy how just exercising your body, your mind, can just help the other areas in the day, other areas of your life.
Yeah, I guess a lot of it is just about principle at the end of the day, right? A willingness to commit to something. And it can start with something as simple as getting I personally work out in the morning, to your point. There's something
I can tell, Nathan.
Thanks. No, but in all seriousness, there's something about getting, to your point, Eileen, getting moving first thing of the day.
Yeah.
Before anything else, really. I'll take my daughter to school, drop her off, go to the gym. And it's invigorating, but there's something about the discipline associated to committing to that act and doing so, showing up consistently day in and day out, that makes a really big difference, and that translates to other parts of the business. I think it would just make, I don't want to kind of harp on this or spend too much time on it, but I've experienced way too much over the years, even with something as simple as photographers being willing to show up for a photographer's lunch. Oh, it's 20 minutes across town. I don't have time to drive across town. Meanwhile, they're sitting on Facebook, wasting an hour or 2 or 3 hours scrolling on Instagram or otherwise. I think that we just all, as photographers, business owners, myself included, need to be willing to commit to a more disciplined approach to managing our calendar. And many times it's just as simple, to your point, Eileen, as putting it in the calendar and doing the thing, showing up for it. It makes a really big difference. On that note, though, of time management, talk to me a little bit about delegation. What have you all experimented with delegating in your business, and what has had the most benefit?
Yeah. So as far as outsourcing and
Yeah,
delegating?
outsourcing or delegating. I use both words here on the podcast only because I think over the years there's been this kind of obsession with the term outsourcing, and a lot of times outsourcing is associated specifically with editing. And the reality is, of course, we can delegate so many different things in our business. So
Sure.
Right. There's overlap as well.
for sure, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, one big thing is house cleaning.
Nice. Okay.
But yeah, besides editing, we have our own roles so that we don't like just work all over each other. He does mostly, I guess, marketing and emails, and I do more of the fine tuning, like photoshopping and album design,
Okay.
things like that. So
Yeah.
delegation and our responsibilities, at least.
Yeah. I just think back to the early years in our business where we're looking over each other's shoulder while each of us edits, and there was a time and place for that, right? Because
Sure.
it was good in that we were doubling up on all of our tasks. When we had a sales meeting, we were both present for it. When we had a consultation, we were both present for it. We did everything side by side, and it was good in that we were both learning each aspect of the business during that time. But once you kind of understand the business that you manage, you have to, as in a la the E-myth. The entrepreneurial myth, this idea that usually people don't own a business. Most of us as photographers in particular, this is true. We don't own a business. We own a job, right? We don't have a boss outside of ourselves, but all we really have is a job, and we're still doing all the technical work of that job. There's no room for it to scale. If it did scale, something would be out of our control, and we would be scared to death grasping for that control again. So if you want a business that can actually grow without becoming overwhelming, then you do have to go from being a technician, being the worker in your business, to being the manager of your business. And so that is where delegation comes in. And so for Eileen and me, it was delegating the jobs between each other. We are not allowed to look over each other's shoulder or to give input when we're in our realm unless it's asked for. And then, things like, whether it's the house cleaning, or if you owned a business, brick and mortar shop, you would have to hire, a cleaning service or something to take care of that. If we kind of treat ourselves as professionals and respect ourselves as professionals, we can find that we'll have more time to commit to growing our businesses. Each and everything that we're able to delegate out. As long as we're focused, right? It doesn't do much good to pay for a lot of folks to do services that you can, that they can, someone can do at a lower rate than what your time is worth, and then not work. So you do have to be focused.
And as far as time management, also stacking helps. I think that's the term it's called. So just Tuesday, I'm going to do consultations, and Wednesday I'll do headshot sessions and things like that, so that you can just group it together, and just do back-to-back whatever activities for that particular day instead of wasting time throughout the week.
Yeah, it's jumping from one type of text to the next within a relatively short amount of time. I think it keeps us in some cases from really focusing on the thing that we're doing. So if you can spend 2 or 3 hours one day on a particular type of task or project, and then do a different type on a different day, I think there is some efficiency to that too. I'm also glad, Philip, that you brought up the significance of scalability. We talked about E-Myth Revisited. I think it's the most recent version of the book. And we've mentioned it on the podcast before. It largely deals with how to scale a business. And to your point, you're right. It's not about delegation for the sake of sitting around. Certainly, it's more about the ability to scale a business. We're not going to be able to effectively grow a business beyond a certain point if we're always trying to do it ourselves. And that's
right.
where,
because your time is finite, right? And
100%.
All you really have to give to your business is your time as one human being. And so once that time's run out, then your business is limited after that, unless you bring people in and are willing to accept help, really.
There's that piece of it. And by the way, I mean, I spend a lot of time on the podcast talking about the significance of time. I also don't want to work 60 hours a week, even 40 hours a week on some weeks. I want to take advantage of the freedom and the flexibility that comes from being a business owner and being able to delegate. But I've actually, it's funny, Jill, my girlfriend, who also happens to run digital marketing for us, we've been having a conversation recently around this very topic. And it's an interesting one because her perspective coming from the education world into the photography industry, regularly working probably more like 50 hours a week, and being the person to whom tasks are being delegated in some cases, had a kind of a different perspective. And she said, we think about this idea of delegation, or we're talking about this idea of delegation for the sake of having a bunch of free time. But the reality is there's a lot more to it at the end of the day. It's delegation to a team, which we need to certainly acknowledge and show appreciation for, number one. But then two, utilizing that time, not just to sit around and watch Netflix, but also to be able to intelligently and intentionally grow our business. And that is what delegation enables us to do. It enables us to scale beyond ourselves, beyond what we're limited to at our own 40, 50 hours a week. We're able to scale more effectively if we're able to actually leverage a team. And that's important. Again, another loaded topic, which I'm sure you all could comment on extensively. But maybe we can come back to that another time. We've talked about books, we mentioned a couple of different books so far. Do you all have another one or two books you want to throw out there, self-help or business books that you can recommend?
One you're reading now, right?
Currently reading this. Phillip had just finished it, but Essentialism by Greg, I can't say his last name.
McEwen? Yeah, Greg McEwen.
I'm not reading that very well backwards on the monitor.
Yeah.
I'm almost done, but yeah.
McKenna's the guy who was had the zoo animals. My mistake.
Okay. I'll trust you on that one.
I'm loving it so far. Yeah, but I'm loving it so far. Just about. So it says the disciplined pursuit of less. Less is more. Just focusing on what's truly important instead of being stretched in so many different directions and being ineffective.
Yep.
Just really focusing on the few and the important.
You talk about that, and I'm holding up my phone screen here, and it's not going to come into focus. I don't think that the camera's not focusing on it, but on my lock screen on my phone, I have my values listed, and I've talked about it in the podcast before, but one of my so-called values is simplicity. And not simplicity, I don't know, there's so many different ways you could define simplicity. When I think about simplicity, I think about focusing on what matters, to your point, Eileen, and that book, the point of that book. Sean, our mutual friend, Sean Austin from KISS, actually has talked about that book, I think on this podcast before, and highlighted the significance of that principle as well. It's easy to get distracted by so many different moving parts in our business, especially as sole proprietors. And in fact, the ante gets upped when we do begin to develop a team, because now we also have employees or team members to work with and think about delegating to, so many different things to keep up with. Oh, it's so much. But at the end of the day, if we aren't focusing on, I guess, if we're constantly reacting versus, to your earlier point, Phillip, being a CEO, being a manager, and being proactive and intentional in what we're spending our time on, we're going to get lost, and we'll only be able to scale so much. And I think a lot of photographers kind of function in that haphazard way. They lose sight of what actually matters. And so we need to get back to that. It's super, super important.
Yeah. And my main takeaway from this book is learning to say no.
Really? Okay.
So learning to say no to the things that aren't going to enhance your life or other people's lives. I think sometimes it's so easy to just say yes to people just because they asked you, but you have to really measure that against what are my values, what is my end goal. So
I think a really concrete example of that for photographers, and it's one of the hardest things I can personally say is one of the hardest things for me to learn. And now we see it over and over again with our students, our members in our Maximizing Mini Sessions community. Is this lesson of not trying to not feel that you failed if you don't book every single inquiry that comes in. So in a sense, the style of mini sessions that we do turn normal mini sessions upside down, and they're not necessarily what people in the broader world think of automatically when they're thinking of mini sessions, their expectations. So you'll get people who come in through this inquiry funnel where you're educating them and making sure that they do know what to expect, because you want to set clear expectations for your client and let them know what the process will be. And then a lot of those will be like, oh, well, thank you for making that so clear. That's not what I thought. So I won't be booking. And that's the hardest thing in the world for many photographers to take at the beginning is, you don't want me? You don't want me? And so it's like a failure. And what we found is being able to, that's qualifying your lead. So one of the things that we've gotten used to in our business, to the point that it's just not hard anymore, it was really hard, is basically turning away clients. It's like, we have had enough bad experiences to know that if we get down on our knees and beg, if we give in and capitulate to demands and change our rates for a client, oh, we booked them, we succeeded. Well, that experience ends up being a strain on the business and a suck of our time and resources.
Yes, that's a precedence, a bad precedence.
So being able to say no and be like, it was good that I say, you know what, the loss of that client was a win. That was a success. And then all of a sudden you have this overabundance of time and you still have, you haven't spent all your opportunity costs. You have the opportunity for the right client to come in, for your process to play out all the way and put you in some of the best experiences with clients you can imagine. And the most respect you felt from a client, people who do value photography, they're out there, and it's a matter of how do you find them, really.
Well, and I think if we're clear up front, we talk a lot about the idea of a big picture view here on the podcast. And the thought process there is having a clear overarching set of goals, financial, time management wise as well, and making sure that the business is being modeled in such a way that it supports those goals. If you're clear about what it is you're trying to achieve, it's easier to filter out the stuff that doesn't matter. But if you haven't clearly established that to begin with, then you're naturally going to kind of haphazardly react to any and everything coming in. And exactly. I know that I function as a business owner for a very, very long time without that clear kind of overarching set of goals. And while my business did fine, it's not that it can't be run that way. It's just I missed out on opportunities, many opportunities, as a result of not being clear, and as a result then not filtering what I was spending my time on, giving my attention to. So it's important to clearly establish that. Yet again, another big topic, but I want to get to the main one at hand. Here we are, well into our interview.
No worries.
I appreciate y'all's patience.
This is the valuable stuff.
Well, and we're gonna get let's actually dig into this topic of mini sessions. There was this past year. I don't want to belabor the topic of COVID. We've all been there, done that, but I know that it's had such significant impact in our industry. That one of the caveats, I guess, being that I know that your students, having taken some of the principles that you've taught about mini sessions, were able to still run their business effectively, maybe even grow their business as a result of the principles that you've been teaching them with these mini sessions. Let's kind of rewind before we get to those principles, though. How did you all even get into mini sessions in the first place? You pointed out that you were doing weddings and that was your primary focus. What was the turning point that led to this?
For us, we were a couple years into our business full time, and our business, this is back in 2008
that we started
our business. It took off within a year full time. That's like kind of the dream, but it was actually a nightmare. We didn't realize that we had to leave our other jobs in order to fulfill our clients' demands on the calendar. We didn't realize that we weren't taking in less than we were expending to keep our business open. So pretty soon we realized that. And we're like, how do we pay the mortgage of our, we had just gotten married. It's our first starter home together. How do we, oh my gosh, we're losing that much money. How do we even afford trash? We cut all of our, we cut our trash pickup. So we would collect it in the carport for a week. And then I'd throw it all into the trunk of our Jetta and take it to the dump once a week. And our car smelled like sewage. Yeah. And it's like, okay, this is our life right now. We're living in sewage. And we might, and it's funny now looking back, like there's an element of humor. But for us at the time, it was all of the stress and everything that many of us understand come with financial straits. We also were dealing with personal loss. We were had a new marriage that basically had no room for growth because we're isolated all of a sudden. Who can relate to that now? But we were working around the clock, trying to learn editing and edit and fulfill clients' orders on a timely basis, which for us was like twice as long as it takes now. And just to do that, we were always side by side working, but we were staring into different computer monitors. There was no relationship. There were no time for friends. So that was our experience. And then at the end of those couple of first years, we realized, this is a failure. We have to, as exciting as we look online, we're going to have to go back to our day jobs. I'm going to have to go back to teaching high school, playing pool boy during the summer. Eileen is going to have to go back to Starbucks and figure something out because this is not working. One last ditch effort was we thought, okay, here's what we've been doing wrong so far. We've been trying to be artists and imagine how a business is supposed to run, imagine what pricing is supposed to be, guess our best guess Like, what information can we collect by fake inquiring from another photographer and getting their, like, what can we put together? And we tried to put this business together and reinvent the wheel. And then we finally decided, Eileen went to business school. What did those old fogies in the academic textbooks teach us? Let's take all of that and really hone it down in a way that is made for a photographer, specialized, and let's test it and see if it actually works. We can't do that with weddings because our weddings, they're booked out a year or more in advance. And so it's not like we had a chance to like try the business model. We said, we're just going to test this. It's our last ditch effort on, let's do mini sessions. Like, mini sessions are the bane of photographers' existence. They will bankrupt your business and cost you so much time and deliver so little money and water down your brand. They're terrible, but we have no other choice. Let's test it with mini sessions. We can schedule them for next week. And so we put together this system based completely on, no magic bullet or fancy thing that we concocted. It's just like solid business principles. And that weekend of doing this process, we made $8,000 off of just under 12 sessions, I guess. So like 20-minute sessions.
Wow.
And we're, probably almost tripling what we were charging for a 12-hour wedding day at that point.
Yeah.
And we thought, this actually works. We're actually serving people.
Worked. We were surprised pleasantly.
We've never seen a client so satisfied and happy about giving us so much money. We knew that it was great because we were giving over our confidence to experts and instead of trying to reinvent that wheel. And so we ended up applying that, of course, the principles we learned to our wedding business, but then only having to shoot like the few ideal weddings each year that we want. And then the real engine of our business behind the scenes running at all times were these mini sessions that were, for us, more profitable even than weddings. So that was what led to us winning an official highest or a fastest growing business award and all these things were kind of shocking that happened through minis.
And how long ago was that? When was that turning point?
That was 2011, yeah.
I think.
Wow.
So that was the first time we experimented with it and have been teaching it at conferences and workshops. PPA had us do several PPA workshops in different states as it became obvious that this was kind of a little movement among photographers. And then this year was wild, like you said, Nathan. This past year, maximizing mini sessions was something that we kind of developed, realizing that weddings alone was scary to have all your eggs in that basket. We've even experienced years where half of our couples almost broke off their weddings. And we're like, what a fluke.
Wow.
But anything like that can happen. And everyone this year experienced that. Yeah. Like your weddings can fall apart. And so having
the question kind of remains, like, do you have a plan B? Like, rather than as a business
diversification, right?
Exactly. Like all eggs in one basket. Do you have other, I guess have you limited your model in such a way that if the one thing doesn't work out, then you're stuck, like you're kind of screwed.
Exactly. And it happens to the best. I can tell you, some of our great friends who are the best wedding photographers in the world have had crazy fluke years. And so we realize you need that diversification.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. So what would you say, if you don't mind sharing, like what percentage of your business is the mini sessions versus the weddings? Like at this point, I mean, you're 10 years in, are the mini sessions the majority at this point?
More than half.
Okay.
So weddings we'll do, we aim for like under 10 weddings a year now. That's our ideal. 5 to 10 weddings a year.
Okay.
And we're shooting mostly like $10,000 wedding budgets now. So that will be one part of our portrait or wedding income. And then the rest of that is done from 20-minute sessions that do indeed lead to full-length sessions sometimes. But basically a full-length session, we are only going to do that if it serves the client's needs, if that's really honestly what they need. Otherwise, minis actually provide for people's needs a lot better in a high percentage of situations.
So many of our students are actually wedding photographers. And of course, this past year, everybody had to pivot, and especially wedding photographers. And those who tried it out for the first time, they're like, wow, this works. And what's great is they already had clientele, past clients, that they could send out this email that they're doing mini sessions one weekend, and they just book it up so quickly.
What would you say, Eileen, and maybe this is kind of goes without saying, but I'm curious to get your take. What are the advantages from your experience shooting mini sessions versus weddings, or maybe any other genre that you've photographed?
Advantages, I
Yeah.
would say probably just being able to connect with more people and connect with our community, because
Okay.
there are many different ways that we do mini sessions.
Okay.
Yes, we have our mini session events that's specific to like fall mini sessions where you can, get your Christmas cards and all that. But there are also other ways where we can partner with local businesses to do mini sessions where it's like a win-win situation, helping each other out.
So it's interesting to me that the first thing that didn't come to the front of that list of advantages would be time. Like my assumption would be the fact that you can get in and get out, shoot it really quick and be done. Is that not still one
There's
of the
that
biggest
too.
appeals?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Oh, totally. So I wasn't sure what angle you're going, but definitely.
No angle,
it
just kind of
appeals
curious
to-
in general.
Yeah, it appeals to short attention spans, and that's what people love. They're like, okay, it's a low commitment on my part. Yeah,
Okay.
I'd love to do a session.
What we found, this is really interesting. We actually did a survey to find out, we're really doing stuff to find out what are people's internal needs. What is it?
Yeah.
What can we speak to in our marketing? And the survey showed that the number one hesitancy that most families had about booking a portrait session was, it had nothing to do with like, I don't know if you're the best photographer for it or anything. What is going on in their heart and mind is, I'm afraid of my kids melting down and embarrassing me in front of a professional. That was the number one thing.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, having a 20-minute, the last thing someone wants is like a 2-hour session. A 20-minute session in our experience is just gold. It's just perfect,
Yeah.
especially for families with young kids, where, kids walk away on a high. We have this experiential process we walk them through. So it's not just posing. It's a real interactive thing, and
Okay.
it becomes an adventure for the kids to go on for 20 minutes. And at the end of it, my favorite part is that a lot of kids walk away saying, I want to be a photographer when I grow up, because that was the best
Really?
experience for them. And so you can imagine how parents want to come back to us again and again for that, because there's a consistency and that fear is diminished that they had in the back of their minds.
Okay.
So that's one thing. We do families mostly for our minis and seniors. But a lot of our students are doing boudoir, pets, and different genres as well. But whether it's kids or whether it's the grumpy, husband, 20 minutes kind of helps everyone in that way too.
Yeah, and I know we're short on time, but just to kind of summarize, we have this low entry point. So it's just a low session fee. Ours is $49. But then they
Wow.
only purchase what they want. There's no
Okay.
minimum purchase, but we're all about serving them with the physical artwork. So serving them in the best way, not just handing over digitals, although that is offered in our price sheet, but really serving them in a way that really that they benefit from. And then so just low entry point, and then sales on top of that. So we have an in-person sales session. Of course, this past year had to pivot that too. And we can still keep up our averages for online or virtual in-person sales sessions to where our averages still stay up there.
Okay. So yet again, there's so many different directions I could go here, but maybe just to kind of, I hate to even say sum things up because it's such a massive topic, but
Right.
what would you all say might be the top, say, 3 to 5 most important principles of a strong mini session? What is, if a photographer's like, you know what, okay, you've kind of sold me on the idea, that the potential anyway of this model, what would be kind of the next steps, or at least the recommendations that you would make to them when it comes to developing a strong mini
That's
session?
a great question. I might kind of break those 3 to 5 steps down into kind of
Stages.
categories and stages for
Okay.
me to visualize them.
Okay.
And I'm going to share, if we didn't already email it to you, Nathan, a link to some free documents and ebook that kind of lists out in great detail.
Yeah.
Maybe some that I'll forget right now.
Yeah, I popped it up
But
on
if I-
screen if I'm pointing in the right direction
awesome.
here, but
Oh,
it's,
got
it's
it.
up there in the
Okay.
corner for anybody that's watching live. For anybody that's listening, we will link to it in the show notes, but it's bit.ly/5 tips for Max Minis. We will link to it in the show notes for anybody that missed that.
Those great bit.ly links, bit.ly.
Yeah, absolutely.
5 tips Max Minis. I think of it as kind of like your pre mini sessions strategy or tip would be you've got to create urgency and scarcity. So this is
Interesting. Okay.
practical
I'm
business
taking
principles,
notes here.
right?
I've got a pen. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Urgency and scarcity. These are just As I think Russell Brunson has talked about, people don't actually buy products or services. Products and services are available all around us. We're always making, like our synapses are firing, and we're deciding what to buy and what not to buy, how we feel at the moment. And what everyone reacts to is offers. And that offer has, a lot of times we're just like, we as photographers, we have a website. Yeah, please book me anytime. Come on and fill out my contact form. I'll be here waiting for you patiently, twiddling my thumbs. When really many sessions do give this unique opportunity where it's not like, hey, when's your wedding? Tell me when are you going to want to book me for? It's, we are having this event. We're having this promotion on this limited time. There's only so many spots available. And there's a number of things you can put to create that sense of urgency, like book up before it fills up. And that all of those elements of a good business offer. So that's kind of on the front end. And then within the session itself, so you're on the day of the shoot, I think one of those things to really maximize the session and see sales increase is to create not just go for like that perfect one portrait, but we have this method that we call balloon posing that leads people through an experience where you create a few of these perfect portraits. That is what you kind of hope they'll choose for above their mantle. But all those interim moments, creating a lot of variety, being free as a photographer to create a lot of just on the fly photos that aren't going to win print awards, that aren't perfect, but speak to the emotion and the connection of your subjects. What we found from, nearly 12 years of hundreds and hundreds of clients, in-person sales, what I've loved best about doing in-person sales all that time is just sitting there and listening and learning what people are thinking and hearing them tell you what they're thinking. The ones that your clients value the most are not those award-winning print competition
9 times
images.
out of 10.
The ones they value the most are the ones that they see that expression in. They see that authentic moment of joy. They see the connection. And so you will see your print, if you're offering the right kind of products that allow people to order more of those moments, you'll really see those sales increase as well. And then the last thing I would say is, go ahead.
Before we keep going, if you don't mind. So when you talk about
that as a little nugget at the end.
We'll definitely get to point 3. I'm just, as a follow-up to that though, when you talk about the variety of poses that cater more to what will actually appeal to clients versus what's going to win a print competition award. How did you, was it just simply listening to those conversations that enabled you to put together a list of poses that were most effective?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's not a list of poses. Think of it this way.
Okay.
Over the years, when we're culling our images, right? We can all imagine this. I'm culling my images and I'm like, I'll leave that one out. I need to have more images to show them though. I better just leave that one in for them to see, I guess.
Okay.
At the beginning, that was us, right?
Okay.
And then we find out those images that I just barely decided to leave in are always their favorite images. Okay, maybe I'll leave more of that kind of image in. Oh my goodness, it doesn't have to be a perfect composition. They're not looking for that. So a lot of those images that maybe wouldn't be blown up as an enlargement on their wall, there are products that they fit in an album or something like that where you need those in-between moments. You need those, when people look at their images, they're looking for a feeling, not for, the 12 rules of a print winning competition.
Okay.
So not only allowing more of those to stay in, but creating more of those types of images intentionally. Just having people.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, when I'm directing, as a photographer, I'm not just posing people anymore. I'm directing them. And
scenarios.
What we call balloon posing, which the shorthand for that is, we'll kind of inflate and give positive feedback to create a perfect image that's kind of building an energy. And then once you can't hold it together anymore, we'll pop that pose, we'll call it, and we just let it go to rot. So for example, for the family, it might be like, oh, your kids are such little angels. Look how perfectly they're sitting still. Oh, that smile on their face. And the kids just know that something exciting is coming because I've told them beforehand to get ready for these surprises.
Oh, okay.
And they're like, yeah, we're perfect. And they really are perfect. So we get all these perfect images. The kids are obeying because they know they're about to disobey. And I'll say, now attack your parents. Now tickles. Now hugs. Now, sort of describe this or that about your own family and who's the one in your family who represents this person. And there's these interactions that once you put this into motion, the pose that you started with is done for. You're never going to get back to that. But you've waited till you've gotten all the shots you needed, and then you just let it explode in intimacy and interaction. And you just go in there, and you can just at that point be trigger finger, right? And just get a lot of close-up emotional moments that become so valuable to that subject.
Okay, that's interesting. Literally, I mean, you might have seen me looking down. I've got a notebook and I'm taking notes here. But so we started with the significance of urgency and scarcity prior to the session, of course. And I think there's yet again another topic we could kind of follow down a rabbit trail. But there's an interesting amount of control innate to being able to set your own schedule for these sessions versus being strapped to a particular date for a wedding, which I'm sure encourages this notion of flexibility as a business owner as well. But urgency, scarcity.
Absolutely.
Number two, the way that I kind of summed it up was just direct scenarios versus focusing on individual poses. And I know that you share more of the details of how you go about that process through your course, but that's an interesting concept that I think it gives us the opportunity as photographers to play a little bit too, and not kind of beat ourselves up or hold on too tight to the situation. Just kind of let scenarios play out. That's kind of cool. Okay, so then you said there was a third concept. What was that?
Yeah, if I was sort of time stamping them to chronologically, the last thing is the partnerships that we create. So this is the marketing strategy, right? So once your fall mini sessions are over, if you're going to have that urgency and you're going to have that scarcity, then you can't just announce mini sessions every weekend, because then people know they're just always available.
Okay.
And there's no motivation to book now, right?
Okay.
So although we only publicly announce mini sessions once or twice a year, always fall, sometimes spring and fall.
Okay.
We actually have mini sessions playing kind of like on replay behind the scenes at all times. And that's because through our local marketing strategies, we have partnerships with so many businesses. It was fun to do a really strange kind of a remix on our normal community marketing strategies during COVID.
Okay.
And we and a lot of our students in the group actually created a program where businesses were promoting our mini sessions, our safe one at a time backyard mini sessions when weddings couldn't even be photographed. And money from those sessions was actually going back to help businesses that were on lockdown. And this was before there was even any government help or anything. So it was what was keeping businesses alive. It's a mix on a strategy that we usually do to raise money for charities.
Okay.
So our mini sessions are constantly giving back to the community and becoming part of the ecosystem of our community that way. So that's the beautiful thing to me, is that whether you're giving back to your community, or like in our case, I remember when we were adopting our son, and we were like $10,000 short right at the end of being paper pregnant. And we're like, we're supposed to be going to China soon to meet our son and bring him home. And we're able to schedule like, okay, let's do mini sessions for adoption and supply the needs that we had for our own family as well as the community. So that's where it's just been a beautiful thing that I think just emotionally for us, we're just so connected to the beauty of this business structure and how it keeps us going.
And I know we don't have time to get into it in detail, but when you talk about the marketing strategy as it relates to partnerships, can you tease that just a little bit? What does that, at least the beginning of that process, look like?
Yeah, I mean, there's about 3 different major methods that we do, but let me just hit on one as an example. How many of you have kids in elementary school and they come home with like a promo about go eat at Texas Roadhouse tonight, and the school gets 15% of your of your ticket goes to the school. Yeah. So
sadly, they don't normally do that with sushi places. I don't know why. But
wouldn't that be even better? They'd get a better return on their dollar as well. But a variation on that would be if we have these really lovely gift certificates for a free mini session. And really, as we mentioned, the session fee is not where we're making our money. This is counterintuitive, but the greatest sales strategy is to give something away. You build trust immediately, and then you prove yourself. You prove that you're going to give a professional experience and you're going to be trustworthy and come through. Why do people pay like these huge session fees for pictures that have not even been produced yet? That's why it's so hard to book people for photography. It's like, I'm going to pay you all this money up front, and I don't even know. I have no value or context for what the product's going to look like. So what we do is, if you can give away your sessions, and we have real estate agents, orthodontists, other businesses like giving away our sessions for us and basically booking them for us.
Wow.
And when they come to us, we never have cared about that $49 session fee. Call it an advertising fee. It's a very minimal advertising fee.
Okay.
And then our average is now, if they're $1,000 to $1,500 per family who comes through a mini session, then we're very happy to have those just keep coming through on the conveyor belt.
Wow. Okay. Man. See, I mean, like what are we now? Like an hour and 16 minutes in, and we barely even scratched the surface. But in all seriousness, I want to respect your time and everybody that's chimed in, listening in, whether it's in the audio afterwards or video now. You mentioned earlier the link, and I'm going to actually pop it back up on the screen here too. Tell our listeners a little bit about some more of the information that they can get about this approach to mini sessions there at that link. What kind of information will they find?
Yeah, that's an easy way to find Eileen and me, and just hopefully connect with us. And even if you just want to take part in our Up and Atom photographers meeting every morning, you'll find us. You'll be able to find us through that. But this is actually it's not like a 3-page 3 tips kind of ebook. This is, dozens of pages of in-depth information about the structure of our business, basically.
Okay.
And how it has worked for well over a decade, and a lot of people have come on and kind of restructured their businesses around it. So when you download that, right now, because we're actually coming off a really rewarding year of helping people transition their wedding businesses, especially to this model.
Sure.
And then we're doing occasional video classes as well. So you can download this. It's free ebook, free information. You'll have it forever. But if you do download it now, whenever your podcast goes live, Nathan, then there should be a link. If it's not too late, you'll see a link to also sign up for one of our web classes, as long as we're doing those.
Okay.
So it'll be kind of some video education to go along with the ebook as well.
Brilliant. I mean, I haven't been to the link personally, but you've definitely compelled me to do so now, because I'm curious to get that ebook and take a look and see.
Awesome.
Really learn more of the details that you're talking about. So I appreciate you sharing that. And for everybody else listening in, I'm also going to, or watching rather, I'm going to pop back up the Blumes right here on the screen. The Blooms.co is their website. And then we'll also pop up their Instagram handle here. It's the Blumes, TheBlumes. We've got that there on the screen. We'll put all this in the show notes at bokehpodcast.com. I want to say thank you guys once more for taking extra time to hang out with me today and share all this information as well.
Yeah, our pleasure. Thank you, Nate.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.